talk with you about it?
I'm
Okay.
recording now. Sorry, I forgot to
Okay.
record. That's important. Doing the whole preamble again. Yeah, just a massive fan of yours, Sheldon, for so many years. Um, your movies defined a generation. They altered the course of action cinema with your dynamic style. We had heroes because of you: Jean-Claude Van Damme, Mark Dacascos, Sylvester Stallone, Dolph Lundgren. I think you had a hand in forging strong male identity, as I said in my review. Was that your intention? Because it had such a potent impact on so many young men like myself, and still does.
What was the key word there again?
Strong male identity.
Strongman identities.
Strong male identity. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Uh, yeah, people have told me I was a purveyor of toxic masculinity in the 80s and 90s, and yeah, I'll own up to that. I certainly was. Um,
I see. I would disagree and say it's very positive what you did for all of us because you made us want to train, you made us want to be powerful, you made us want to learn how to fight, and it's such a potent impact that you had. But growing up as an ardent fan of your film, Sheldon, I watched Firefight, and it was as much a curio as it was significant because of the narrative. What was the feedback like in March when it was released? Because I was sitting back thinking, this is incredible. This is not the Sheldon Lettich that I grew up watching.
I really was a bit surprised and overwhelmed by the feedback. I didn't think the feedback was going to be quite that positive. I made the movie quite a few years ago, and it certainly does not fit in with my oeuvre. But and I thought people thought it was a very gritty, realistic version of the Vietnam War. And actually, I think it's a bit cheesy and over the top. We've got this battle scene where you've got Philip Rhee and Simon Rhee they're throwing martial arts kicks and stuff like that would never have happened. And there's a number of things in there that are really stretching it. It's not realistic like Platoon, for example. Uh, it is more of an over the top kind of an action movie, but it's got a lot of realistic elements because, well, I was really there, and I co-authored that little piece with people that were actually there, and it was based on real events. So I guess there is sort of a gritty reality to it, even though we've got Philip and Simon Rhee
All the
throwing
kicks.
martial arts kicks that belong in a Jackie Chan movie or something. So I was happily surprised that nobody pointed that out. Nobody pointed out what's with these Korean guys throwing martial arts kicks in Vietnam. That never would have happened. But nobody has commented on that. So except for me. So I'm pointing it out myself.
It's fantastic. Your movies in the 80s and 90s specifically, for me, they were sexy, they were vibrant, and exciting. And Firefight is such a contrast in its delivery, narrative. Um, would you have actually pursued war movies further on because you have a military background or yourself?
Yeah, yeah.
Would
Well,
you have, yeah,
uh-huh. I have a um, I wrote a screen. I've talked about it many times. A screenplay called Firebase, which Walter Hill was very interested in making. Sylvester Stallone was very interested in making. Sam Raimi loved it. So it's this big Vietnam War epic, and yeah, I definitely would have pursued that, but it just didn't happen. When you've got Walter Hill and Sylvester Stallone digging the script and wanting to make it, and it doesn't happen, well, it's a little hard to push any further than that. And it was just the timing was off because I wrote it well before Platoon came out, and Walter Hill takes it to Paramount and says, "I want this to be my next movie." And they tell him, "Walter, nobody wants to see a Vietnam War movie. So find something else to do. How about a sequel to 48 Hours, something like that?" And then Platoon comes out, and suddenly everybody's making these Vietnam War movies like Hamburger Hill, and there were a number of other ones. So I kind of fell between the cracks with that one, and I don't know if it's ever going to get made. And then there's certain aspects of it that I saw in Tropic Thunder. So I'm watching Tropic Thunder and I'm thinking, oh shit,
That's my
nobody's
movie.
yeah, that's my movie. Nobody's ever going to take Firebase seriously after seeing Tropic Thunder, which has really got, there's really some parallels. There's some scenes that are very similar in Tropic Thunder, and you'd think, well, I really feel I'd feel complimented by that, but instead I'm going, oh no, they're playing this scene for laughs. I'm playing it seriously, so I don't know if this movie's ever gonna make it in front of the cameras.
Well, I think we have a mutual friend in Viking Samurai. I was wondering whether you'd consider making Firebase now, 2023, with someone like David K or Viking Samurai in the lead of Kuda. I mean, because Kuda's a very level-headed,
Oh well,
calm, measured.
Kuda was not a character in Firebase. That was
Or
a character.
firefight and firefight.
That was Firefight. Yeah, and there was no character named that in the original script. But Frank Dukes and I had written something. We'd written a few war movies together, and we did have a character named Kuda in them. And so I basically assigned that name to the character that Frank was going to play. Yeah, so it would be possible to revive it all, I suppose. And you know, I have been involved with other military movies, other war movies, like you know, Legionnaire, of course.
Rambo 3 as well.
Huh? What's that?
Rambo 3 as well.
Rambo 3. Yeah, Rambo
awesome.
3 is more of a it's more of a fantasy, more of a you know, kind of an action movie, comic book. But Legionnaire is a more serious look at the French Foreign Legion and all of that stuff that was going on in Morocco at the time. So that's a pretty serious war movie, I feel. And I would have loved to have made more stuff like that, but just didn't happen.
I read a quote, Sheldon, that you said it was based on a theatrical stage piece you wrote called Traces.
Yes, yeah.
What was the basis of Traces?
Well, by any chance, have you read my biography?
No, I should. David's been telling me to read it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I have to. Yeah.
Which I titled From Vietnam to Van Damme, because basically that's my trajectory in the film business. When I first started out, I was writing a lot of Vietnam stuff, and Tracers was one of them. And Tracers was a theatrical piece that I did with, I believe it was 8 other Vietnam veterans, all of whom were actors. I was the one writer member of Tracers. And we developed it over a course of, I'd say it was at least half a year that I worked on it with these guys. And basically, we're sitting around just telling war stories about things that we went through. And then since they were actors, they'd get up on their feet and we'd try to act some of these scenes out. And we'd try to ad-lib them. And I was writing down notes based on what we were doing in the workshops. And from those notes, we constructed this play. It's not really a play in the sense of having a 3-act structure. It's very episodic. And people have talked about turning it into a movie, but it's just, I just don't think it's a movie. The best we could do was what I did with Firefight. And that was just one scene for it. And that was a scene, most of the scenes were between, actors, like 2 actors, 3 actors, 4 actors. And Firefight was a scene that took place on a hilltop, involved a battle, it involved a helicopter. So the director of Tracers said, no, we can't do this on the small stage. And he said, look, you can just have that little piece and do whatever you want with it. So I did, because I really liked the piece. And I turned it into a little script. And then I said, well, what the hell? I'm going to raise some money. I'm going to make this movie. And so we did. And it turned out pretty damn good. Frank Dukes at the time felt that he had some movie star chops. He kind of did.
He does.
People who knew him at the time thought, yeah, Frank could be an actor, a movie star, if he put his mind to it, and so I put him in the lead role, and he actually helped me quite a bit putting it together. He's the one who got Philip and Simon Rhee.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because he knew them. He knew a lot of martial artists. He got us some stunt people. We had a number of stunt people. We found some people that could do special effects, and yeah, we put this little thing together, and it turned out pretty damn good. And it never really it didn't make any money. I didn't sell it. It was never a commercial piece. However, without that little film, it's doubtful that I would have directed Lionheart. That's what really pushed me over the top into directing movies, because Sam Raimi was a buddy of mine at the time. Sam saw the film. He really loved it. Sam ended up showing it to Dino De Laurentiis and getting me a directing deal with Dino. And Jean-Claude showed it to Sunil Shah at Imperial Entertainment, because Sunil was very reluctant to hire me to direct Lionheart. He wanted Eric Carson to direct it, because Eric had directed Black Eagle earlier, and had directed I think Angel Town for
Oliver Gruner.
Yeah, Eric directed
Yeah.
Angel Town. So Eric was the guy he had in mind to direct the film, and Eric ended up being a producer on the film, because basically he was there watching my back just in case I really screwed up. Eric could step in and take over, but fortunately I didn't screw up really bad, so it worked out. But Sunil needed to see something, and had I not had Firefight, I don't know if he would have had the confidence to put a feature film in my hands. So it worked out for me in many ways.
It's funny you mentioned Sam Raimi, because and your friendship with him, because Firefight is almost like a bit of a quasi horror movie. I watched it 12
Oh
times
yeah.
that night. It's a horror film. It's frightening, it's sad. And you can see that it's very gritty and real.
And it's got a lot of blood in it, so
Got a
that's
lot of blood.
very Sam Raimi. Sam really loved the film. I know he showed it to Dino, he showed it to some other people, and he would sit in the in the screening room while it was being screened, and he told me that he would even goose the sound sometimes to that's a very much a Sam Raimi technique, is like goosing the scares, goosing the sounds, and he would actually sit in there and pump up the volume real quickly to get an effect. So yeah, Sam was a big fan of that.
That's incredible. Given the nature of Firefight, it's quite unconventional at the time. I mean, did it lay dormant because Hollywood, the landscape of Hollywood, or machinery of Hollywood, was too restrictive at the time?
Could you rephrase that for me, please?
Yeah. So you look at Firefight, and it's like, oh, Sheldon would do more war movies, but he did more action, martial arts, big blockbuster films.
Right.
Was the machinery of Hollywood very restrictive, and they might have said, oh no, your movies are the action, the big, was that why it's sort of lay dormant for so long and didn't sort of come up until David?
Well, I let it lie dormant for
okay.
all this time, simply because this was a different era. We shot it on 16 millimeter film, so there's a lot more work to shooting something on film and completing it on film. And first of all, it took a while for me to edit the film, do the sound. I had to pay for it every little step. So if we had to do I hired a few people to do sound cutting. I paid people all along the way. I wasn't getting people to work on it for free. You ever hear of a director named Josh Becker?
Josh Becker.
Josh directed a kind of a famous little sleazy low budget horror movie called Thou Shalt Not Kill Except. You ever see that one?
No, I think we're going to say Basket Case or something, but
Josh was part of the Detroit crew that grew up with Sam Raimi. I think Sam was a neighbor of his, and Josh ended up working on lots of Xena and Hercules episodes. But yeah, so he was making little movies with Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. He's made a number of Bruce Campbell films. And I hired Josh to cut sound effects on Firefight. So he cut my sound effects. So the point I was making is that it took a while to do the editing, because I had to hire I had to get a room. I had to get a room. We had to have equipment. You couldn't just do this stuff on a computer. Okay, there were no computer editing programs at the time. Basically, you had film. Okay, you had 16 millimeter film.
Yeah.
You had to cut it, splice it, tape it together. And then so we did that. We got a cut that I finally liked. And then we had to put sound effects in. You couldn't just put the sound effects in on a computer. Basically, you had to cut them in. You had the sound effects are on little pieces of 16 millimeter film. You had to cut them in. They had to match the picture. So it took a while to put this little thing together. A couple of years actually, and then I blew it up to 35 millimeter. It looked quite magnificent in 35 millimeters. So that's what when Sam and Jean-Claude were showing it to producers, it was in a 35 millimeter screening room. So it was quite impressive. Looked great on a big screen. But there was no way to digitize stuff like that back then. So basically, you had to put it on half-inch VHS tape. Wow. And it looked bad on half-inch. The sound was not big. The picture looked crappy, and I just didn't want to show it to people. If I was going to show it to somebody, I wanted to go on a 35 millimeter screening room and put it on a big screen. And I couldn't do that. It cost money each time to do something like that. So finally, just in the last few years, I was able to digitize it in 2K, for a reasonable price. And that's why I was holding off on it until I had a showable version. And so we finally had a showable version, and I got David to put it on Viking Samurai, and people finally had a chance to see the movie. And people were talking about this movie for years. They'd heard I'd done this little movie. Where can I see it? I looked all over YouTube, can't find it. That's because I didn't put it on YouTube, because all I had was a crappy VHS. And I suppose I could have digitized off the VHS, but it wouldn't have looked great. So I ended up digitizing off of the 35 millimeter print, and it looks pretty damn good. I'm quite happy with it. And obviously you liked it, and a lot of people liked it. That's why it took a while to get it out there.
It wasn't the Hollywood landscape or anything that constrained it. It was really just more, screening issues. Right.
Yeah, it was just mundane technical issues, financial issues, just crappy details like that. Like nobody in Hollywood was trying to hold the film back. I just finally got to a point where I was able to do something with it, get it looking good so it wouldn't embarrass me. And I put it out there, and I'm happily surprised at how much people liked it.
Well, when David mentioned about this film, this mythical film, I thought it's going to be like a martial arts film, and I thought it's going to be firefight. There's going to be gunfighting in it. Then when he said, "Look, would you like to review it?" I was shocked. I thought this is really. It was frightening. It was good, but frightening, and that's why I watched it 12 times. Every time I watched it, I'd get something new out of it. Then I'd make notes for my review. It's really incredible.
Have you looked up any information on tracers? The play was written for?
No, I only saw your quote. That's why when I was researching the interview. You got something?
I'm going to show you. This is we actually Tracers was presented at the Odyssey Theater in Los Angeles. That's the original cast right there as Tracers. And it ended up going to Joseph Papp's Public Theater in New York City. which is a very prestigious theater. And then the Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago. It was directed by Gary Sinise, the guy who played
the actor.
Lieutenant Dan. Yeah, but this was like prior to
Lieutenant Dan.
Dan, and I think it got him. I think it got him jazzed about playing this Lieutenant Dan character. So there's the original.
Amazing.
Those are the original guys that were that I worked on the play with, and yeah, it's I don't know the last time it's been presented, but it was playing in a number of venues for years. It was in they staged it in Australia. They staged it in London, at I think the Royal Court Theatre. So New York City, the Joseph Pabst Public Theater. Again, a very prestigious theater. So it was in a lot of prestigious venues. And then it was on a lot of college campuses. Students would want to do the play, and it was presented on a lot of campuses. So that's basically where Firefight came from. Was from this little piece, and we had different character. Well, we had just a few different character names. Actually, there was no character named Cuda. I specifically assigned that name to Frank Dukes's character. The sergeant was a different guy, but we did have some of the other characters in the play, like we did have a character named Waterbull.
Yeah, Brian Thompson.
Yeah. Which is a great name, which was a very common name in Vietnam, especially for big guys. You know, like a big guy carrying a machine gun. Hey, you're going to be Waterbull, all right? And we had Dinky Dow and Professor and Doc, and so that's where it all came from. Was from that.
Can I buy the Traces script from eBay, and then maybe I can do a review of the of that script?
You can get it. Yeah, it's available. I think even on Amazon you can get it.
Yeah, I'll probably do that. Then.
There are editions of it, and it still gets staged once in a while. Somebody hears about it, and they read through it, and they decide, let's put this on for our college drama class, and it's been popular over the years. I get royalties from this thing, believe it or not. So
that's incredible.
Yeah,
it's a great design. And it's funny you talked about casting. You know, you had a level-headed leader, Frank Dukes' character,
right.
And Brian Thompson, and then your super kickers in the Ree brothers. I mean, what influenced your casting? Because it was so unique.
Well, there was this magazine, this weekly magazine back then called Dramalog. There was no internet at the time, and we didn't have a casting director. So I put an ad in Dramalog, and I think I still have the original ad. And Brian Thompson's one of the people who saw the ad and came in to read for one of the parts. And that was his very first film role, was in Firefight. And Brian and I we're still really good friends. He just called me yesterday. He was going to come by. I've stayed friends with a lot of the actors that I've worked with over the years. Actually, there was a guy named Richard Chavez that was in the original version of Tracers, and Richard's actually one of the soldiers in Predator. He's in he's in Predator, and then he was doing a lot of stuff for a while. He was on the War of the Worlds TV series. So yeah, Richard was one of our guys, and some of the actors that were in the original play went on to do some stuff, and some didn't. That's just the way it goes in this business.
Sheldon, with the grittiness of the setting, and it's so dour, it's so somber. Was the main theme the hopelessness of war rather than brotherhood? You know, the fact that the futility of conflict and all that.
I suppose you nailed it right there. It was just the irony. I like the irony of them needing the helicopters, but the helicopters won't come in because it's a very dangerous place for helicopters. Yeah. I like the fact that I put these guys in such a desperate situation where they absolutely had to have a helicopter come in, and the helicopters are reluctant to come in. and this was based on a real incident. I forgot which guy in the cast told us this. It was actually a few different stories. We would sit around and basically swap war stories, and so that's what this was constructed from, was from some real situations. And one of the guys had been in a situation like that, and there was a helicopter valley in Vietnam, and the helicopter pilots just said screw it, we're not going to land there because we know we're going to get shot down. So I thought that was a very dramatic juxtaposition of needing a helicopter to get medically wounded guys out, but the helicopters won't land because not because they're cowards, but just because they know they're going to get shot down. So they're not going to get the guys out, and they themselves are going to become casualties. So it's just kind of a gut-wrenching situation.
Yeah, and I think when I watched the movie, I think the 12th time, I thought of Heart of Darkness, Joseph Conrad and Apocalypse Now, and that futility, that Marlowe feels is what Cuda feels when he's trying to radio in.
Right, yes.
It's devastating. You feel you feel gutted by that.
Well, I'm just so happy to hear you nailing all of these points.
Thanks.
Because these are points that I was making in the script, and I mean you're getting them all. You're hitting every point that I was trying to make. So obviously,
it's an honor.
Obviously, the little movie works.
It's like I said, 12, 13 times, and then wasn't able to sleep that night. I was messaging David. This scared the crap out of me, David. This was very sad and depressing. And that's why when I wrote my review, it took me ages to come up with a title. Legendary Lettich Lost Media.
Right.
Such an honor to watch.
Well, I guess it was like a lost movie because people had heard about it. I had talked about it now and then, and just the fact that Frank Dukes was in it. So we had Frank Dukes, we had the Ree brothers, we had Brian Thompson. So people were curious; they wanted to see this thing, and I just didn't have it in a presentable manner. And finally, I was able to get it digitized so that it looked good and sounded good, and
awesome.
Obviously, it works.
Was the most expensive or challenging part getting the helicopter and the uniforms? I imagine those would have been really pricey.
The uniforms were easy because I don't know if they still have Army surplus stores, but like the little movie was made. This is like 1983, so it wasn't that far removed from the actual Vietnam War. And you go in a surplus store, and they've got the uniforms, they've got the web gear, they've got all this stuff. We rented the weapons from a company called Stembridge. The hardest part was the helicopter, and it was just the fact that I had actually been in the Marine Corps, had actually been in Vietnam, went to Camp Pendleton, did a song and dance, pretty much just begged them, hey, I want to make this little movie about Vietnam. And they actually gave me this it's a CH-46 helicopter. It's not, this is no small piece of gear. It's a pretty big chopper. It uses a lot of fuel. I believe the fuel cost, we only used it for about 20, 30 minutes, but the fuel cost was like $2,000. And I had a few basic moves worked out. I had it storyboarded. So, well, first I needed to circle around, and then I needed to do this and then do that. And so it was pretty simple. And I had like 2 lieutenant colonels flying this helicopter. I guess everybody, they were all kind of impressed. They're making a movie here. The helicopter is going to be the star of the movie. So I got these 2 lieutenant colonels to fly the thing. And that was probably our most spectacular piece of business, was doing that. Staging the battles. The battles were, and also explosions.
Oh yeah.
Frank found a guy who knew how to do explosions, and we, I actually, funny thing is, I didn't really have a costume designer. So I bought a bunch of uniforms at this Army surplus store, and I just kind of dumped them on the ground. And I said, okay, guys, find a shirt and a pair of pants that fit you and a helmet. All right, so we put all that stuff together. Well, now we need some foxholes. So can I get you guys to actually dig the foxhole? It'll get you in the character. So yeah, the actors actually dug the foxholes. Yeah, it was all very very student movie in every respect.
Well, Sheldon, I know there's I've got a reminder about the time frame. I've only got 8 minutes, but in addition to thanking you, thanking David Moore and Viking Samurai as well, I'm going to be very Australian and very cheeky. This might be a bit flippant to ask, but just want to give you an elevator pitch. Australian American martial arts action comedy, spiritual successor to Showdown in Little Tokyo, but with more cross-cultural conflict, to be shot in Australia. One Aussie detective, one American detective have to learn to work together. Bringing in To Live and Die in LA, Black Rain, Rush Hour. What do you think?
Look, sounds fine to me. All you need, if somebody's willing to put up the money.
The money, yeah.
Okay, I can do anything. All right, but you got to find somebody who says, "I like your idea. Okay, here I'll put up a few $1 million and we'll put this together." Okay, that sounds good to me.
I said to David, I said, look, David is the guy I'm talking to, David Kurzel, fucking Samurai. We're talking about this and I'm rewriting the script. And I said, it would be so good if we got Sheldon to direct it, needs maybe 10 million. And that would just be amazing. But
the hard part is it's
the money.
Always the money. That's the hard part. Yeah. I'm your director if you want me. Okay. The script's written. Okay. The script.
Money's there.
Love the script. Do we have any money? Because if not, then we got to do what I did on Firefight. Like, okay, guys, find a shirt and a pair of pants that fit you, and let's dig some foxholes, and let's start shooting. But yeah, and I had to all the equipment that we used on the film. I had to rent all that stuff. I had to pay for it. I had to transport it there, transport it back. It took some time. It was some work. It's just so much easier to make when you've got the money and you've got a producer who really knows how to make a movie. Well, then it's all easy. Then you've got assistant directors, you've got wardrobe people, you've got people that do the special effects, that do the props. So it's all kind of in place for you, and basically you just say, okay, you guys go here, and then you guys walk over here, and it's that easy. It's I'm not going to say it's easy to direct a movie, but it's much easier to do it if you're doing it under the you've got a budget and you've got a producer and you've got a production company and all of that. So that's basically that's the way I like to make movies, whenever it's possible. I hate to go back to doing it the way I did it for Firefight, although I would if I had to. Even then, you need some money. Okay,
yeah.
So
it's just, I mean, Sheldon, it's I'm elated on the inside that, yeah, I mean, if you said to the 15-year-old me you'd be interviewing Sheldon Lettich in a couple of years, I wouldn't have believed it. I really thank you so much for your time, and obviously David
thank you
Moore,
very much.
Viking Samurai, and Lee Golden, who runs Film Combat Syndicate. He said, you've got to do this. You love Sheldon's movies. I said, yeah, I have to.
Okay. By the way, did you have you gotten the new version of Bloodsport?
No.
Oh, okay. Look, they came out with. I happen to have it right here in front of me. I wasn't going to pitch it. And this came out in Germany, but they did it's like a 4K transfer of Bloodsport. It's never looked this good. It's never looked this good. Okay, so there's
screenplay.
Huh?
Oh, wow.
I wrote the screenplay.
Yes, you're at screenplay, yeah. I've got a T-shirt with that image on that I wear to the gym, Sheldon. So and all the young guys ask me, "What's that?" I said, "It's Bloodsport." How do you not know Bloodsport? That's incredible. If I buy that and post it to you, would you sign it? Do you do that? How much would that cost?
I would absolutely, yeah, no problem at all. I would certainly sign it. But this is you can get it on. Check this out. It's just terrific.
It's beautiful. Look at that art.
And they got Van Damme to do an interview. He did a long interview, and it's hard to get him to do an interview, but he's just so in love with Bloodsport. Yeah, there he is
with the punch, when he gets
Bolo.
Bolo.
And it's got like a little booklet. Okay, like I said, this is available in Germany, and it's region 2, so you got to have a all region Blu-ray player, but it's 4K. I think they made the transfer from the original negative. Looks gorgeous, sounds great. It's got I have an interview. I talked for about 25 minutes about how Bloodsport came together, and then Jean-Claude's on there talking for, again, he's on there. It's got to be 45 minutes or so talking about it. And they got the cinematographer, they've got the composer. So it's definitely worth getting it. You can, if you want to get a copy, you got to go to Amazon.de. You know, the
Germany,
German,
Deutschland. Yeah,
Deutschland, right.
Deutschland.
The German version, and then you got to have an all region Blu-ray player to play it. But if you're a fan of Bloodsport at all, it doesn't get better than this. So I would highly recommend that.
I'll have to go on there and then go to David Moore and say, can you send this to Sheldon so I can get the autograph on it?
Oh yeah, we'll get it. We'll get that taken care of. Absolutely, I'd be happy to have it.
Sheldon Lettich.
I was in. I went to an autograph show about a month ago in New Jersey. First one I've been to, really, and Deborah Renard was there from Lionheart. But there were people who came from Germany. This couple, this man and his wife, they flew over from Germany. They had a Bloodsport poster, and they'd gotten Van Damme to sign it, and they flew over just so they could get me to co-sign the poster. And there were a lot of people there, basically wanting autographs from me. So maybe we'll do a few more shows like this. Right now, I'm talking to some of the people that were in Lionheart about doing just some kind of a special Lionheart presentation, maybe in Los Angeles, because I'm good friends with Harrison Page and with Deborah Renard, and well, Jean-Claude also. You never know, he might show up. Brian Thompson. So we're trying to pull together like a little event in LA for all the Lionheart fans of the world, and we'll get a bunch of autographs signed. So we'll see how that goes.
Sheldon, hopefully I'll be the one that does the Australian review on that. But it's been an absolute pleasure and honor. Like I said, I just can't believe I'm talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And I appreciate the adulation. I'm a little embarrassed by it sometimes, but I appreciate the fact that that my movies impacted people.
Yeah, I made a lot.
Myself. I've had people say to me, and I'm quoting too, you were responsible for my childhood. I've had people say to me, your movies taught me how to be a man. Like,
yes, exactly.
Okay. Exactly. Yeah, well, I'm very happy to hear that. And